The security camera I installed last week showed me why my family wanted me gone. I sat in my neighbor Ruby's living room, watching the footage on my phone, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. There on the screen was my son Chad, standing in my kitchen with his wife Brooke, counting stacks of cash they'd pulled from my bedroom closet. The closet I kept locked, the money I'd been saving for 40 years. $200,000, Chad said, his voice clear through the hidden camera's microphone. That's just what she keeps in the house. The life insurance policy is worth $800,000. Brooke laughed, actually laughed, as she ran her fingers through my money. So when are we doing this? I'm tired of pretending to care about that old woman. My chest felt tight. This was my baby boy. The child I'd rocked through fever dreams and paid for to go to college by working 3 jobs. The man I'd given everything to build a life for. Soon, Chad said. But we have to be smart about it. Make it look natural. Old people fall all the time. Before we continue, please tell us where you're watching from so we know how far our stories reach, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Ruby put her hand on my shoulder. We'd been neighbors for 22 years, ever since I bought the house on Maple Street after my husband George passed. She was the one who suggested I install the cameras after I started noticing things going missing. Small things at first. My grandmother's silver spoons, the cash I kept in my jewelry box, then bigger things. The deed to my house disappeared from my safe and reappeared 3 days later. But something felt wrong about it. "How long has this been going on?" Ruby asked, her voice soft. "I don't know," I whispered, "but I'm going to find out." The footage kept rolling. Chad opened my refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of my blood pressure medication. He emptied half the pills into his palm, then replaced them with something else. White pills that looked similar but weren't the same. "These should do it," Brooke said. "Preston said if she takes these with her real medication, it'll cause a stroke within 2 weeks. Natural causes. No investigation." Preston Hughes, my insurance agent for 15 years. The man I trusted with my financial future. The man who came to my house for dinner every Thanksgiving. I felt sick. The video jumped to a different day. Chad and Brooke were in my living room, and they weren't alone. A man I'd never seen before sat on my couch, the couch where I read bedtime stories to my grandchildren Amara and Jalen every weekend. "So you want it to look like an accident," the stranger said. He had a scar across his left cheek and cold eyes. "Exactly," Chad replied. "She's old, she's fragile. A fall down the stairs. Maybe she trips in the garage. Whatever works." "My fee is $25,000, half up front." Brooke pulled an envelope from her purse. My purse, actually. The designer bag I'd bought myself for my 70th birthday. "Here's 15. You get the rest when it's done." The man counted the money and nodded. "Give me a week to watch her routine. I'll make it clean." They were hiring someone to kill me. My own son was paying a hitman with my own money to murder me. Ruby made a sound in her throat, somewhere between a sob and a gasp. "Loretta, you need to call the police right now." "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Not yet. Because here's what Chad and Brooke didn't know. Here's what nobody knew, except my lawyer, Thaddeus Carmichael, and my banker in Zurich, Switzerland. I wasn't just Loretta Washington, widow and retired schoolteacher. I was Loretta Marie Duchamp Washington, the illegitimate daughter of Henri Duchamp, a French count who died 6 years ago and left me $28 million in a trust fund I'd been carefully moving and investing ever since. My mother never told me who my real father was. She took that secret to her grave when I was 19. But when I turned 67, a lawyer from Paris tracked me down with documents, DNA tests, and an inheritance that changed everything. The man I thought was my father, Samuel Henderson, was actually my stepfather. My real father was European nobility who'd had an affair with my mother during a business trip to Chicago in 1951. I'd kept it quiet, told no one except Thaddeus, who helped me set up offshore accounts and investment portfolios. I lived simply, kept teaching, kept being just Loretta from Maple Street, who shopped at the same grocery store and attended Greater Hope Baptist Church every Sunday. I wanted to see what my family really thought of me without the money changing things. Now I knew. "What are you going to do?" Ruby asked. I looked at my phone, at my son's face on the screen, and something inside me went cold and clear. I'm going to let them think they're winning. And then I'm going to destroy them. The plan started small. I called Thaddeus the next morning from Ruby's house. "Loretta, I've been trying to reach you," he said. "The wire transfer to Switzerland went through. The house sale is complete." "Good," I said. "They don't suspect anything?" "The shell company I created is airtight. As far as public records show, your house was sold 3 weeks ago to Maple Street Properties, LLC for $600,000. The new owners are letting you stay there temporarily out of kindness." "And the deed?" "The one in your safe is a copy. The real deed is in my office, and it shows the sale date as January 3rd. Your son can't claim ownership because technically you sold the property before any dispute arose." I'd learned about Chad's plans 2 months ago, long before the cameras. Ruby had overheard Brooke on the phone in the grocery store parking lot talking about getting rid of the old bat and finally having a house worth something. Ruby told me immediately, and I went to Thaddeus that same day. We'd been planning ever since. "What about the insurance policy?" I asked. I contacted Preston's supervisor at the insurance company. Turns out Preston has been under investigation for fraud for 6 months. They're building a case. Your information about him helping your son will seal it. Everything was falling into place. But I needed more evidence. I needed to catch them in the act, on camera, with witnesses, so there would be no doubt, no escape, no way for Chad to charm his way out of consequences the way he'd done his whole life. That night, I went home. Chad's car was in the driveway, which was unusual. He rarely visited anymore unless he wanted something. I took a deep breath, checked that the cameras were recording, and walked through my front door. "Mom!" Chad called from the kitchen, his voice cheerful. Fake. "We were just talking about you." I set my purse down and walked in. Chad and Brooke sat at my kitchen table, the table where I'd served them Sunday dinners for 12 years. Brooke's 2 poodles, Coco and Chanel, lounged in the living room on my furniture. Those dogs lived better than most people, with their designer collars and gourmet food. "We need to talk," Chad said, and his smile didn't reach his eyes. "About what, baby?" "About your living situation." He folded his hands on the table like he was about to discuss something reasonable. "Brooke and I have been thinking. This house is too big for you. You're getting older, your memory isn't what it used to be." "My memory is fine." "Mom, you forgot Amara's birthday last month." That was a lie. I'd sent Amara a card and $50, but Chad had intercepted it. I found the unopened envelope in his car 3 weeks later when I borrowed it for a grocery trip. "And you keep forgetting to take your medication," Brooke added, her voice dripping with false concern. She was pretty, I'd give her that. Blonde hair, expensive clothes, a smile that could sell ice to a penguin. But her eyes were empty of anything real. "I take my medication every morning," I said calmly. "That's not what Dr. St. James told us," Chad said. "She's worried about you. We're all worried." Dr. Vivian St. James would never break patient confidentiality. Another lie. "So here's what we're thinking," Chad continued. "Brooke and I move into the house. We take care of everything. The mortgage, the utilities, the maintenance. You can stay in the guest room for now, just until we find you a nice assisted living facility. This is my house. Actually, Mom, legally, it's complicated. Dad left you the house, but there are debts. Back taxes, some liens. Thaddeus looked into it." "You talked to my lawyer?" "We had to, for your own good. And Thaddeus agreed that the best thing is for us to take over the property before the bank forecloses." Everything he said was a lie. There were no debts, no liens, no foreclosure. I owned the house free and clear, or rather, I had before I sold it to myself through a shell company. But Chad had been busy creating false documents, forging signatures, building a paper trail that would let him steal my home. I see, I said quietly. Chad relaxed, probably thinking I was giving in. We'll take good care of you, Mom. This is for the best. That's when Brooke spoke up, her voice sharp. And about sleeping arrangements. We'll need the master bedroom, obviously. You can use the guest room for now. For now? Until we work something out. She smiled. The thing is, Coco and Chanel need the guest room too. They're used to sleeping in a bedroom, and the guest room has the best ventilation. I stared at her. You want me to give up both bedrooms? There's the garage, she said, like it was obvious. It's heated, kind of. You'll be fine with some extra blankets. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment that would show everyone exactly who they were. The garage, I repeated. Just until we sort things out, Chad said quickly. It's temporary. Your mother can sleep in the garage, Brooke said cheerfully, like she was offering me a vacation. It's better than nothing. And honestly, at your age, you don't need much space. The dogs, though, they're sensitive. They need their comfort. I looked at my son. My baby boy who I'd held in my arms 44 years ago, who I'd nursed through pneumonia when he was 6, who I'd helped through his divorce from his first wife, who I'd loaned $30,000 to start his business that failed within a year. Okay, I said. They both blinked, surprised. Okay, Chad asked. If that's what you want, then that's what we'll do. I'll sleep in the garage tonight. Brooke's smile widened. Perfect. I'll have the master bedroom set up for us by the weekend. Mom, you're being so reasonable about this. I wasn't being reasonable. I was being strategic. That evening, I packed a small bag. One change of clothes, my medication, my phone. I made a show of carrying blankets out to the garage while Chad and Brooke watched from the kitchen window. Brooke laughing, Chad looking uncomfortable but not stopping her. The garage was cold. It was January, and the temperature was dropping to 20 degrees tonight. There was no heat, just a space heater that barely worked. I set up the cameras to capture the scene, my sad little makeshift bed on the concrete floor, the frost already forming on the windows. Then I walked out the back door, through Ruby's yard, and into her warm house where I'd actually be sleeping. They really made you do it, Ruby said, horrified. They think they did, I corrected. Tomorrow morning they'll find the garage empty, and that's when everything begins. I slept well that night, in Ruby's comfortable guest room, while Chad and Brooke probably celebrated their victory. While they counted my money and planned my funeral. While they imagined a future where I was gone and everything was theirs. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning I woke at 5. I called Thaddeus. It's time, I said. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. By 6, I was at the airport. By 8, I was on a plane to Switzerland. By noon, I was sitting in Klaus Miller's office at the Zurich Private Bank, watching him pull up my accounts on his computer. Mrs. Washington, he said in his precise German accent. Everything is in order. The transfers have been completed. Your new residence has been purchased. And the surveillance? All footage has been uploaded to the secure server. The FBI has copies. So does your attorney. Good. I looked out the window at the Swiss Alps, snow-covered and beautiful, and pulled out my phone. I opened the app connected to my home cameras, the ones Chad and Brooke still didn't know about. They were in my kitchen, or their kitchen now, making coffee. Brooke was on the phone. No, seriously, she actually slept in the garage. Brooke laughed. Can you believe it? I thought she'd push back, but she just did it. God, old people are so pathetic. Chad sat at the table, looking at his phone. His face went pale. Brooke, he said, Brooke? Stop talking. What? The house. There's a notice on the door. They ran to the front door. I watched through the doorbell camera as they read the eviction notice posted there by Maple Street Properties, LLC, informing them they had 24 hours to vacate the premises as they were trespassing on private property. "What the hell?" Brooke screamed. "This is our house!" "It's not," Chad said, his voice shaking. "Mom sold it 3 weeks ago. I checked the records. She sold it to some company. She can't do that. She's senile. We'll challenge it." "With what money? The account is frozen. All of them." "What do you mean, all of them?" "Mom's accounts. The life insurance. Even the cash in the house. It's all gone." I smiled, sitting in Switzerland, watching their world collapse through my phone screen. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close, because at that exact moment there was a knock on their door. On my door. The door to the house they thought was theirs. Agent Denise Crawford stood there with 3 other FBI agents and Officer Raymond Tucker from the local police department. "Chad Washington?" Agent Crawford said. "Brooke Washington? You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse. You have the right to remain silent." I watched them get handcuffed in my living room, Brooke screaming, Chad silent and pale, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The plan was just beginning, and they had no idea how deep this went. They had no idea about the hitman who was actually an undercover detective named Sean Valdez. They had no idea that every conversation, every plan, every awful thing they'd said had been recorded and documented. They had no idea that Preston Hughes was being arrested at the same time for insurance fraud and conspiracy. They had no idea that the old woman they'd tried to murder was now sitting in a $5 million chalet in the Swiss Alps, controlling everything like chess pieces on a board. They thought they were so smart. They thought I was so weak. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. And the best part? The absolute best part? I hadn't even told them about the grandchildren yet. The phone call came at 3 a.m, Switzerland time. I was awake anyway, watching the sunrise over the Alps from my balcony, wrapped in a cashmere blanket that cost more than my old monthly pension. "Mrs. Washington, this is Agent Crawford. We have a situation." My coffee went cold in my hands. "What kind of situation?" "Your grandchildren, Amara and Jalen. Child Protective Services removed them from your son's home during the arrest, but Brooke's mother is filing for emergency custody. She's claiming you abandoned them, that you're mentally unfit, and that she's the only stable family they have left." I stood up so fast the blanket fell. "Candace Wheeler is filing for custody?" "Yes, ma'am. The hearing is in 72 hours. If you're not there to contest it, I'll be there." I hung up and immediately called Thaddeus. He answered on the first ring. "I heard," he said. "Loretta, this is exactly what I was afraid of. Candace has money, connections, and she's already convinced a judge to fast-track the hearing. She's painting you as an unstable woman who fled the country and abandoned her family. Those babies are not going to that woman." Candace Wheeler was Brooke's mother, and she was just as vicious as her daughter, only better at hiding it. She was a real estate attorney, wealthy, respected in the community, and she'd never liked me. Called me that poor woman Chad married down for at their wedding. Said my grandchildren would have been better off if their father had married someone from a better family. Now she wanted my babies. "I need you to file a counter-petition," I said. "Full custody to me, and I need you to pull every piece of evidence we have on Brooke and Chad. I want the judge to see exactly what kind of people they are." "Already done, but Loretta, you need to come home. If you're not physically present, Candace will use it against you." "Book me on the next flight." 16 hours later, I landed in Chicago. Ruby picked me up from the airport, her face tight with worry. "Girl, the whole neighborhood is talking," she said as we drove. "Half of them think you're a genius. The other half think you've lost your mind." "What about church?" Ruby's expression softened. Pastor Monroe wants to see you. He called an emergency meeting of the deacon board. He wants to help. Greater Hope Baptist Church had been my spiritual home for 38 years. Pastor Isaiah Monroe had presided over George's funeral, baptized my grandchildren, and counseled me through the darkest days of my grief. If anyone could help me now, it was him. We drove straight to the church. It was Tuesday evening, and the parking lot was full. Inside, I found not just the deacon board, but dozens of church members crowded into the fellowship hall. Sister Gladys Freeman stood up when she saw me. She was 81 years old, sharp as a knife, and had known me since I first walked through those doors. "Loretta Washington," she said, her voice ringing out. "We need to talk about what your son did." The room went silent. "I know," I said quietly. "I know what he did." "Do you?" Gladys walked toward me, her eyes fierce. "Because we've been doing some investigating of our own. After Ruby told us what she overheard, after the arrests, we started asking questions. And child, what we found out made us sick." Pastor Monroe stepped forward. He was 67, with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Loretta, sit down. You need to hear this." I sat. Ruby sat beside me, holding my hand. 3 months ago, Pastor Monroe began, Amara came to Sunday school with bruises on her arms. When Sister Freeman asked about them, Amara said her mother did it, said she'd spilled juice on Brooke's designer purse, and Brooke grabbed her hard enough to leave marks. My stomach turned. "We called child services," Gladys continued. "They investigated, but when they showed up, Brooke had an explanation, said Amara bruised easily, had a medical condition. She had a doctor's note and everything. CPS closed the case." "What doctor?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Dr. Harrison Reeves, works at that fancy clinic in Evanston. We did some digging. Turns out Dr. Reeves is Brooke's cousin. The medical condition doesn't exist. It was all lies to cover up abuse." I felt like I couldn't breathe. My grandbaby, my sweet Amara who loved to draw and wanted to be a veterinarian. Brooke had been hurting her, and I didn't know. "There's more," Pastor Monroe said gently. "Jalen hasn't spoken at school in 6 weeks. His teacher reached out to us because she knows he comes here for Sunday school. She said he used to be talkative, happy. Now he barely says a word. She thinks something's happening at home, but every time she tries to talk to Chad or Brooke, they shut her down. Say she's overstepping." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, tears running down my face. "We tried," Ruby said. 3 times I called you to come over and talk. But every time, Chad would answer your phone, said you were sleeping, said you weren't feeling well, said you'd call me back. You never did." Because I hadn't known. Chad had been intercepting my calls, isolating me, making sure no one could tell me what was really happening. "That's not all," Gladys said. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was Amara's backpack, and inside was a notebook, a diary. "Amara left this at church 2 weeks ago. I've been keeping it safe. Loretta, you need to read it." She handed me the notebook. I opened it with shaking hands. The first entry was dated 6 months ago. "Dear Diary, Mama yelled at me again today. She said I'm stupid like Grandma. She said Grandma is old and useless and one day she won't be around anymore. I miss Grandma. I wish I could live with her." I kept reading. Entry after entry of an 8-year-old child documenting abuse, neglect, fear, Brooke yelling, Chad ignoring them, being sent to bed without dinner for small mistakes, being told they were burdens, being told their grandmother was senile and didn't love them anymore. The last entry destroyed me. "Dear Diary, I heard Mama and Daddy talking about Grandma again. They said she's going to have an accident soon. I don't know what that means, but it sounds scary. I want to call Grandma, but Daddy took my phone away. I'm scared something bad is going to happen." Amara had known. Somehow, my 8-year-old granddaughter had known her parents were planning to kill me, and she'd been trying to warn me in the only way she could. We're going to that custody hearing with you, Pastor Monroe said firmly. Every single one of us. And we're going to tell that judge exactly what we witnessed. Candace Wheeler is not getting those children. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you. But even as I said it, I knew it wouldn't be enough. Candace had money and lawyers. She had a perfect record and a respectable reputation. I had accusations, recordings, and a son sitting in jail. The hearing was in 2 days. That night, I stayed at Ruby's house again. My own house, the one I'd sold to myself, was a crime scene now. The FBI had been through it, collecting evidence. The blood pressure medication Chad had tampered with, the forged documents, the hidden cameras I'd installed that had captured everything. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Amara and Jalen, about where they were right now, whether they were scared, whether they knew I was coming for them. At 2 a.m, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Washington? A man's voice, unfamiliar. This is Detective Sean Valdez. The hitman, the man Chad and Brooke had tried to hire to kill me. I know who you are, I said. Good. Then you know I'm the one who's been building the case against your son for the past 8 weeks. I need to talk to you. In person. There are things about this case you don't know yet. Things that are going to matter in that custody hearing. What things? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the precinct in an hour? I woke Ruby, and we drove to the police station. Detective Valdez met us in a private conference room. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and a scar on his left cheek. The scar from the video, the one I'd seen when Chad and Brooke hired him. Mrs. Washington, he said, shaking my hand. You're a brave woman. What you did, setting up those cameras, documenting everything, was smart. Most victims never see it coming. I saw it coming because I'm not the first, I said. Am I? His expression darkened. No, you're not. He pulled out a file, thick with papers and photographs. Your son and daughter-in-law have been running this scam for 7 years. You're the 3rd victim we know about. The room tilted. What? Chad's first wife, Denise. She died 5 years ago, fell down the stairs in her home. Accidental death, the coroner ruled. But after we started investigating Chad, we reopened the case. The angles were wrong. The injuries didn't match a fall. We think he pushed her. Oh, God. Denise had a life insurance policy. $500,000. Chad collected it all. Used it to start his business, which failed, and then he met Brooke. Valdez pulled out another photo. Brooke's first husband, Nathan. Died 3 years ago. Carbon monoxide poisoning in his garage. Accidental death. But the garage door had been tampered with, sealed from the outside. We think Brooke killed him for his life insurance. $300,000. They're serial killers, Ruby breathed. We believe so. And here's the thing, Mrs. Washington. Candace Wheeler knows. We have evidence that she helped Brooke cover up Nathan's death. She used her legal connections to make sure the investigation was closed quickly. She's an accessory after the fact. Then arrest her, I said. We can't. Not yet. We don't have enough proof that will hold up in court. But in a custody hearing, with the right evidence presented, it could change everything. He slid a document across the table. This is a sworn statement from Nathan's sister. She suspected Brooke from the beginning but was too afraid to come forward. She's willing to testify now. So is Denise's mother. They both want to see justice for their family members, and they want to make sure Amara and Jalen are safe. Will the judge allow this in a custody hearing? If your lawyer files the right motions, yes. It goes to character. It shows that Candace Wheeler has a pattern of protecting dangerous people, and that giving her custody would put the children at risk. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. There's one more thing, Valdez said. Preston Hughes, your insurance agent. He's been cooperating with us. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he's testifying against everyone involved. He's giving us names, dates, transactions. He's admitted that this was an organized conspiracy, that there are others involved we don't know about yet. How many others? We're not sure. But Mrs. Washington, you stumbling onto this, you installing those cameras, you being smart enough to protect yourself, you might have just broken open the biggest elder abuse and murder-for-hire ring in the state. I sat back, overwhelmed. I'd thought this was about my son wanting my money. I hadn't realized I'd uncovered something so much bigger. What do I need to do? I asked. Fight for those kids. Win that custody case. Because once you have them safe, once they're out of Candace's reach, we can move forward with charging her. But if she gets custody, if she has control of them, they become leverage. She'll use them to force you to drop charges, to stop cooperating. We've seen it before. She's not getting my grandchildren, I said firmly. Valdez smiled. Good. Because those kids need you. Amara's been asking about you every day. She told the social worker that you're the only one who makes her feel safe. My heart broke and mended at the same time. The custody hearing was on Thursday morning. I wore my best church dress, the navy blue one with pearl buttons. Thaddeus met me at the courthouse steps, his briefcase full of documents. Are you ready? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. The courtroom was packed. Pastor Monroe sat in the front row with Gladys and 20 other church members. Ruby was there. Detective Valdez sat in the back, and on the other side of the room, perfectly coiffed and confident, sat Candace Wheeler with her team of 3 attorneys. She looked at me with such contempt, such certainty that she would win, that I almost wavered. Then the doors opened, and Amara and Jalen walked in with their social worker. Amara saw me and her whole face lit up. She tried to run to me, but the social worker held her back. Not yet, sweetie. Soon. Grandma! Jalen shouted. His first word in 6 weeks, according to his teacher. I started crying right there in the courtroom. Judge Octavia Reeves entered, and we all stood. She was a black woman in her 50s, known for being tough but fair. I'd researched her. She didn't tolerate nonsense, and she put children's safety above everything else. Let's begin, she said. Candace's lawyer stood up first, painting me as an unstable, vindictive woman who'd abandoned her family in their time of crisis. He talked about my sudden flight to Switzerland, my questionable mental state, my failure to provide a stable home. It took everything in me not to stand up and scream. Then Thaddeus stood. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence that tells a very different story. For the next hour, he presented everything. The videos of Chad and Brooke planning my murder, the tampered medication, the forged documents, Preston's testimony about the insurance fraud, Detective Valdez's findings about the previous deaths, Amara's diary entries, the testimony from church members about the abuse. Candace's face went from confident to pale to furious. Your Honor, her lawyer stammered, these accusations are outrageous and unsubstantiated. Are you saying the FBI fabricated their investigation? Judge Reeves asked coolly. No, but are you saying the child's diary is falsified? It's a child's imagination. Are you saying 20 church members, including a pastor with 30 years of service, are all lying? The lawyer went silent. Judge Reeves looked at Candace. Mrs. Wheeler, did you know your daughter was abusing these children? No, of course not. Did you help your daughter cover up her first husband's death? That's absurd. Answer the question. Candace's composure finally cracked. My daughter did nothing wrong. That man was unstable. His death was an accident. I simply made sure the investigation didn't drag on and traumatize Brooke further. By interfering with a death investigation. By protecting my child. The way you want to protect your grandchildren now? By putting them in your custody, where you can control what they say and who they talk to. Candace stood up, her face red. Those children belong with family, not with some woman who ran off to Europe. Mrs. Washington ran to Europe to save her life, Judge Reeves said sharply, because your daughter and her husband were actively plotting to murder her. Sit down, Mrs. Wheeler. Candace sat, and I could see her hands shaking. I'm granting emergency temporary custody to Loretta Washington, Judge Reeves said. Full custody hearing will be in 90 days, but based on what I've seen today, I have no doubt about the outcome. These children will remain with their grandmother. Mrs. Wheeler, you are not to contact them or Mrs. Washington. If you do, I'll hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Candace said, her voice small. Amara and Jalen, come here. My grandchildren ran to me, and I caught them both, holding them so tight I thought my heart would burst. Amara was crying. Jalen was crying. I was crying. It's okay, I whispered. Grandma's got you. Nobody's going to hurt you ever again. We left the courthouse together, my babies holding my hands. The church members cheered. Ruby hugged me so hard I couldn't breathe. Thaddeus was grinning ear to ear. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. But that night, as I tucked Amara and Jalen into bed in Ruby's guest room as I kissed their foreheads and promised them they were safe, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stepped into the hallway and answered. You think you've won, a voice said. Not Candace. Someone else. A man's voice, cold and professional. You think you've protected them, but you have no idea how deep this goes. Your son and his wife were small fish. There are bigger players in this game, and they don't like loose ends. Who is this? Someone who's going to make you regret ever installing those cameras. Enjoy your victory, Mrs. Washington. It won't last long. The line went dead. I stood in the dark hallway, listening to my grandchildren breathe peacefully in the next room, and realized that this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in Ruby's kitchen with a baseball bat across my lap, watching the doors and windows, listening for any sound that didn't belong. The threatening phone call played in my mind on repeat. Your son and his wife were small fish. There are bigger players in this game. At 5 a.m, my phone rang again. This time it was Agent Crawford. Mrs. Washington, don't leave the house. We're sending protection. There's been a development. What kind of development? Preston Hughes was attacked in his cell last night. Someone tried to kill him before his testimony. He's in critical condition. My blood went cold. Is he going to make it? We don't know. But whoever did this had access to the jail, had connections with the guards, had resources. This is bigger than we thought. We're moving you and the children to a safe location until we can figure out who's behind this. Within an hour, 3 FBI agents were at Ruby's door. They moved us to a hotel downtown, 2 rooms with agents posted outside. Amara and Jalen thought it was an adventure, but I could see the fear in their eyes. They'd been afraid for so long. They didn't know how to feel safe. Grandma, Amara whispered that night as we lay in the hotel bed. Are the bad people going to find us? No, baby. Grandma won't let that happen. Mama used to say you were weak, that you couldn't protect us. I pulled her closer. Your mama was wrong about a lot of things. The next morning, Thaddeus arrived with news. Preston woke up. He's talking. And Loretta, what he's saying is going to change everything. We met in a secure conference room at the FBI field office. Preston was on a video call from his hospital bed, his face bruised and bandaged. I'm sorry, he said, his voice raspy. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Washington. I should have come forward sooner. Tell us what you know, Agent Crawford said. There's a network, Preston began. Elder abuse, insurance fraud, identity theft. It's been operating in the Chicago area for 12 years. They target older people with assets, no strong family support, isolated. They plant someone close to the victim, a caretaker, a family member, a romantic partner. Then they systematically drain the assets and arrange an accident. My stomach turned. How many victims? That I know of. 43. That's just in Illinois. There are networks like this in 8 other states. Who's running it? Detective Valdez asked. Preston hesitated, then said a name that made everyone in the room go silent. Senator Gregory Ashford. Agent Crawford swore under her breath. Senator Gregory Ashford was one of the most powerful men in Illinois. He'd been in office for 16 years, was on 3 major committees, and had connections that reached all the way to Washington. He was also known for his charity work with senior citizens, his advocacy for elder care reform, his public support of nursing home regulations. It was the perfect cover. Ashford's been using his position to identify vulnerable seniors through Medicare records, nursing home inspections, social services, Preston continued. He has people inside the system, social workers, doctors, lawyers, judges. They feed him information, he targets the victims, he takes a cut of everything, usually around 40%. How did Chad and Brooke get involved? I asked. Brooke's mother, Candace. She's been part of the network for 9 years. She's one of Ashford's top recruiters. She brought Brooke in, Brooke brought Chad. They were moving up the ranks. Your case was supposed to be their biggest score yet. $800,000 in insurance, plus whatever assets you had hidden. Ashford was going to take $400,000 off the top. And when I didn't die on schedule? I asked. Ashford got nervous. You installing cameras, you disappearing to Switzerland. It made him think you were onto them. He ordered them to accelerate the timeline, but then you got the FBI involved. Now he's in cleanup mode. Anyone who can testify against him is a target. That's why someone tried to kill you, Valdez said. And that's why he called Mrs. Washington. He wants her scared. He wants her to know that he can reach her anytime, anywhere. He's hoping she'll drop the charges, take the kids, and disappear again. I stood up, my hands shaking with rage. How many people has he killed? We don't know. Dozens, maybe more. He's been doing this for over a decade, and he's gotten away with it because he has protection at every level. Police chiefs, judges, politicians, they're either on his payroll or too scared to go after him. But you're going after him now, I said. It wasn't a question. Agent Crawford nodded. We've been building a RICO case against Ashford for 3 years. We had pieces, but never enough to make it stick. What you've given us, the videos, the testimony, Preston's cooperation, it's the key to everything. But we need you to testify, and it's going to be dangerous. I'll do it. Loretta, Thaddeus said carefully. This isn't like testifying against Chad and Brooke. This is a United States Senator. He has resources we can't even imagine. If you do this, your life changes forever. My life already changed. The moment my son tried to kill me, everything changed. So yes, I'll testify. And I'll make sure that man pays for every life he's destroyed. The trial was set for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, I stayed in protective custody with Amara and Jalen. The FBI moved us 3 times, different hotels, different safe houses. The kids couldn't go to school. I couldn't go to church. We were ghosts, hiding from a man who thought he was untouchable. But we weren't alone. Pastor Monroe organized prayer vigils at Greater Hope. Every night, hundreds of people gathered to pray for our safety, for justice, for the other victims. The story broke in the news. Local, then national. Elderly Chicago woman uncovers massive elder abuse ring led by Senator. My face was everywhere. Ruby gave interviews, telling our story. Gladys gave interviews, talking about the church's support. Other victims started coming forward. Families who'd lost loved ones to accidents years ago, suddenly realizing it might not have been accidental. The pressure mounted. Ashford's lawyers tried everything. They filed motions to dismiss. They challenged evidence. They attacked my credibility, calling me a bitter old woman with a vendetta against her son. They claimed I'd fabricated everything for attention, but the evidence didn't lie. Chad and Brooke agreed to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. They gave up names, dates, operations. Candace was arrested and charged as an accessory to multiple murders. Dr. Harrison Reeves, Brooke's cousin, who'd falsified medical records, was arrested for fraud and conspiracy. One by one, the network crumbled. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in March. The courtroom was the biggest in the federal building, packed with victims' families, reporters, FBI agents, and spectators who'd been waiting in line since dawn. Senator Gregory Ashford sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, looking calm and confident. He smiled at the jury like he was at a campaign event. I sat in the witness waiting room with Thaddeus, my hands folded in my lap, praying for strength. "You're going to do great," Thaddeus said. "Just tell the truth. That's all you have to do." When they called my name, I walked into that courtroom with my head high. I'd faced down my son's betrayal. I'd survived murder plots and death threats. I'd protected my grandchildren from evil people who wanted to use them. A senator didn't scare me. The prosecutor was a woman named Helena Vasquez, sharp and thorough. She led me through my testimony step by step, my relationship with Chad, the discovery of the cameras, the evidence of the murder plot, how it connected to Ashford's network. "Mrs. Washington," she said, "can you identify the man who called you after the custody hearing? The man who threatened you?" "I never saw him, but I recorded the call." She played the audio for the jury. The cold voice, the threats, the arrogance. "We traced that call," Vasquez continued. "It came from a phone registered to Senator Ashford's chief of staff. A phone that was in Senator Ashford's office at the time the call was made, and we have testimony from the chief of staff that Senator Ashford was alone in the office at that time." Ashford's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled. Then came the cross-examination. Ashford's lawyer was a man named Sterling Blackwood, famous for destroying witnesses on the stand. "Mrs. Washington," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "you've been through a terrible ordeal. Your own son tried to harm you. That must have been devastating." "It was. So devastating that perhaps you're looking for someone to blame, someone bigger than your son, someone who can make sense of why your family betrayed you?" "I'm not looking for anyone. I found them." "Or did you create a conspiracy theory to avoid accepting that your son simply didn't love you?" The courtroom gasped. Thaddeus stood up to object, but I put my hand on his arm. "My son may not have loved me," I said, my voice steady. "But that doesn't change the fact that Senator Ashford ran an organization that convinced him murder was profitable. It doesn't change the 43 other victims. It doesn't change the money trail leading directly to Ashford's offshore accounts. And it doesn't change the fact that I have recordings, documents, and testimony from dozens of people who worked for him." Blackwood tried to rattle me for another hour. He questioned my memory, my motives, my mental state. He suggested I'd fabricated evidence. He implied I was senile. I answered every question calmly, clearly, truthfully. When I finally stepped down, the prosecutor called her next witness, Chad. My son walked into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed. He wouldn't look at me. "Mr. Washington," Vasquez said, "who recruited you into this organization?" "My mother-in-law, Candace Wheeler." "And who did she work for?" "Senator Ashford." "Did you ever meet Senator Ashford?" 3 times. Once at a fundraiser where Candace introduced us. Once at a private meeting where he explained how the operation worked. And once after my mother disappeared to Switzerland, when he ordered me to find her and finish the job. Finish the job meaning? Kill her. Make it look like an accident. He was angry that we'd failed the first time. He said we were making him look bad, that we were risking exposure. The jury looked horrified. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Witness after witness testified, families of victims, FBI agents with forensic evidence, financial experts tracking money through shell companies, former members of the network who'd flipped to save themselves. And through it all, Ashford sat there, his expression never changing, confident that his power would protect him. 2 weeks into the trial, something happened that changed everything. A woman stood up in the back of the courtroom during a recess. She was maybe 60 years old, well-dressed, nervous. "Excuse me," she said. "I need to testify. I have information." The judge called her forward. She identified herself as Margaret Sutton, Ashford's ex-wife from 25 years ago. "I left Gregory because I found out what he was doing," she said, her voice shaking. "Back then it was smaller. He was scamming elderly clients at his law firm. I told him to stop. He said he would. But he didn't. He just got better at hiding it. I was too afraid to come forward then. But watching this trial, hearing about all these victims, I can't stay silent anymore." She testified that Ashford had started his schemes decades ago, that she had documents proving his early fraud, that she'd kept them all these years as insurance in case he ever came after her. Her testimony was damning. But more than that, it gave the jury what they needed. Proof that this wasn't a recent crime or a momentary lapse. This was who Gregory Ashford was, a predator who'd been hunting vulnerable people for his entire career. On day 21 of the trial, the jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they came back, the four women stood and read the verdict. "On the count of racketeering, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. 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 Guilty." 27 counts in total. Senator Gregory Ashford's face finally changed. The confidence vanished. He looked small, ordinary, defeated. Judge Octavia Reeves, who'd been presiding over the trial, looked at him with contempt. "Mr. Ashford, you used your position of power to prey on the most vulnerable members of our society. You destroyed families. You ended lives. You corrupted the systems meant to protect people. I'm sentencing you to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. And I'm recommending that every person in your organization face the maximum penalty under the law." The courtroom erupted in applause. Victims' families were crying, hugging, celebrating. I sat in my seat numb with relief. It was over. We'd won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Pastor Monroe and the church members formed a protective circle around me, Amara, and Jalen. "Mrs. Washington, how do you feel?" a reporter shouted. "Grateful," I said. "Grateful to God, grateful to the FBI, grateful to everyone who stood by me and helped me fight for justice." "What's next for you?" I looked down at my grandchildren, holding their hands tight. "We're going home. We're going to heal. And we're going to make sure this never happens to anyone else." 3 months later, I stood in the community center at Greater Hope Baptist Church, surrounded by 200 people. Families of victims, survivors, social workers, advocates. "Thank you all for coming," I said into the microphone. "Today, we're launching the Loretta Washington Foundation for Elder Protection and Advocacy. Our mission is to help seniors protect themselves from financial abuse, to provide resources for families, and to support legislation that holds predators accountable." The crowd applauded. Ruby stood beside me, co-director of the foundation. Thaddeus had set up the legal structure, donating his time. Pastor Monroe had given us space in the church for our offices. "We've raised $2 million in donations," I continued. "We have partnerships with law enforcement, social services, and senior advocacy groups across 8 states. We're going to train people to recognize the warning signs of elder abuse. We're going to fight for stronger laws, and we're going to make sure that Gregory Ashford's victims and their families have the support they need." More applause. Amara and Jalen sat in the front row, smiling. They were in therapy, working through their trauma. But they were healing. They were safe. They were loved. After the event, as people mingled and talked, Gladys Freeman pulled me aside. "You did it, child," she said, her eyes bright with tears. "You turned your pain into purpose." "I had help," I said. "So much help." That's what family does. Real family. Not the family you're born with, but the family that chooses to stand with you when everything falls apart. I looked around the room at all these people who'd fought for me, prayed for me, protected me. Ruby, who'd given me a place to hide. Pastor Monroe, who'd rallied the church. Gladys, who'd kept Amara's diary safe. Thaddeus, who'd believed me from the start. Detective Valdez, who'd risked his life undercover. Agent Crawford, who'd fought for justice. They were my real family. Chad and Brooke were sentenced to 25 years each for conspiracy to commit murder, elder abuse, and fraud. Candace Wheeler got 15 years for her role in the network. Preston Hughes got 8 years but would be in witness protection for life. Dr. Harrison Reeves lost his medical license and got 5 years for falsifying records. Every single person involved in the conspiracy faced consequences. As for me, I sold the house on Maple Street, the one I'd bought with George 40 years ago. Too many bad memories. Instead, I bought a beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood with a big backyard for Amara and Jalen to play in. I kept my chalet in Switzerland as a vacation home, a reminder that I was stronger than anyone ever gave me credit for. I was 73 years old, and I'd survived my family's attempt to murder me. I'd taken down a United States senator. I'd exposed a criminal network that had destroyed dozens of lives. I'd protected my grandchildren from evil, and I was just getting started. The foundation grew quickly. Within 6 months, we'd helped 32 families fight financial exploitation. We'd trained 300 social workers to recognize abuse. We'd lobbied for new legislation that passed in Illinois and was being considered in 4 other states. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from a woman in Florida. Her mother had been targeted by someone connected to Ashford's network. But because of our advocacy work, because of the publicity around the case, she'd recognized the warning signs early. She'd called the police, installed cameras like I'd done, and caught the predator before any harm was done. "You saved my mother's life," she wrote. "Thank you for being brave enough to fight back." I cried when I read it. Because that was the point. That was why I'd testified, why I'd put my life at risk, why I'd gone public with my story, so that other families wouldn't have to suffer what I'd suffered. On a Sunday morning in September, I sat in my usual pew at Greater Hope Baptist Church, Amara on one side, Jalen on the other. Pastor Monroe was preaching about resilience, about how God uses our trials to make us stronger. "Sometimes," he said, looking directly at me, "we go through fire not just to survive, but to light the way for others." After service, as we walked to my car, Amara tugged on my hand. "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to help people like you do." I knelt down and hugged her tight. "Baby, you already do. Every day you're kind, every day you're brave, every day you choose love over fear, you're helping people. You're going to change the world. Will you teach me? I'll teach you everything I know." We drove home together, my grandchildren chattering about their week, about school and friends and all the normal, beautiful things that children should get to talk about. Things they hadn't been able to talk about when they lived with Chad and Brooke. That evening, I sat on my back porch watching the sunset, a cup of tea in my hands. Ruby came over and sat beside me. "How you feeling?" she asked. "Good," I said, and I meant it. Really good. "You know, when you first told me what Chad was planning, I thought you'd lost your mind. Running to Switzerland, selling the house to yourself, all that spy movie stuff." I laughed. "I thought I'd lost my mind too. But you didn't. You saved yourself. You saved those babies. You saved 43 other families from the same fate. Girl, you're a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who refused to die quietly. That's what makes you a hero." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. Somewhere in a federal prison, Gregory Ashford was spending his first of 16,000-plus nights behind bars. Somewhere else, Chad and Brooke were realizing that their greed had cost them everything. And somewhere in the world, an elderly person was being protected because of the work we'd done. I thought about George, my late husband, and wondered what he'd think of all this. I liked to imagine he'd be proud, that he'd understand why I'd fought so hard, risked so much. "I miss him," I said quietly. Ruby didn't ask who I meant, she knew. "He'd be so proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so. You took the worst thing that could happen and turned it into something beautiful. That's love. That's the best kind of legacy." My phone buzzed. A text from Thaddeus. "Just got word. 3 more states are adopting the Elder Protection Act based on our model. You're changing laws, Loretta." I smiled and put the phone away. There would be more work tomorrow, more families to help, more battles to fight. But right now, in this moment, I was just a grandmother sitting on her porch, safe and whole, with the people she loved most in the world sleeping peacefully inside. I'd started this journey as a victim. I'd been targeted, betrayed, and nearly murdered by the people who were supposed to love me most. But I'd refused to stay a victim. I'd become a survivor, then a fighter, then an advocate. And now? Now I was finally, truly free. The garage where they'd tried to break me was empty and cold, sold with the old house. But I was here, warm and alive, surrounded by love and purpose. They'd thought the old woman was weak. They'd thought I'd be easy to destroy. They were wrong. And every single person who'd underestimated me had learned that lesson the hard way. As I sat there watching the last light fade from the sky, I made a promise to myself and to every elderly person out there facing abuse, facing exploitation, facing family members who saw them as nothing more than a paycheck. We are not weak. We are not helpless. We are not disposable. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are stronger than anyone knows. And we will not go quietly into that good night. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.